has been the ability to debate freely and openly face-to-face, particularly about the pandemic itself. Well, Claire Fox, obviously a friend of the show, director of the Academy of Ideas, says we can't let COVID continue to restrict the urgent need to debate key social, economic and political issues, and is behind an event devoted to reanimating the public square. The Battle of Ideas Festival's Open for Debate Day in Westminster this Sunday is dedicated to moving away from Zoom and social media spats based on the premise that it's the frisson of hashing out issues in person that spurs progress and changes hearts and minds. And Claire, it's great to have you back on the show. It's so true, isn't it? COVID has been used by leaders all around the world, not just in the UK, to shut down debate.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not entirely convinced that they kind of malignly used it in that way, but the consequence of taking us away from social interaction has meant that we haven't been able to have arguments or discussions. We've all been reduced to looking at, social media, and no disrespect, I'm as much a fan of it as anyone else, but that it's not real life. And I think that when you get in a room, I mean, we've had a taste of freedom recently, but when you kind of get in a room or go to the pub with a group of people, actually, through the course of arguing out a subject, you actually change your mind on things. Some of the one-sided nature of what you think, I think that some of the debates that you have here, people change, they listen a bit, but certainly when you've got a big crowd. So it's actually on Saturday, but Saturday, it's all right. Saturday.
That's actually a better day for it, to be honest.
But the point that we wanted to make was, look, we have been deprived of our ability to collectively try and solve problems, to take on arguments. We're having discussions on racism, on levelling up, on education policies and academic freedom, and actually on how to win an argument and how to win an argument in a period of conformity. And I'm saying that because we chose not to discuss COVID, because there is an element of which we become slightly obsessive about talking about COVID. And I think it's sometimes good to remember that what we should be doing is tackling the problems of a post-pandemic world, because we've got to rebuild society now.
We do. Are you sure some of the attempts to shut down debate, though, haven't been malevolent? Because, you think about the government, and actually there have been times when throughout this pandemic they have been massively benefited by the fact that MPs haven't been at Westminster in person. Number one, they haven't been able to plot, which is something that happens face to face. Number two, they haven't been able to question in Parliament face to face, so you haven't had boos of the Prime Minister so much in PMQs, for example. Are you sure that actually, to begin with, maybe they thought, we have to do this because of social distancing, but are you sure they haven't thought actually some of these more virtual forms of debate are better for us?
So you make an important point, and I've obviously noticed in the Lords, I've made a point of,
You're there.
I joined the Lords during the pandemic, and it's been very weird because there's only been 30 people allowed in the chamber, all this sort of thing. So
Is that the max?
That has been the max during the time. But I thought, I'm not going to zoom in, I'm going to actually learn the job and actually go in. So that's one thing. And it makes a huge difference.
But you
that
had
the
a
place
choice.
Is not,
you could have zoomed. Is that right?
Mostly people zoomed.
Okay.
So, but the point I'm making is that I'm agreeing with you that in a fairly empty chamber, it sterilises debate. So you're trying to talk to the minister, but there's no sort of sense of a big packed chamber. So at the technical level of parliamentary scrutiny, whether in the Commons or in the Lords, there's been an absolute absence of that and a ghost Parliament. And I do think that Parliament should have been given an exemption. I think that MPs and peers should have been demanding to come back in full and absolutely got on with it. If you can have an exemption for UEFA officials for sports, then I think that democracy deserved that exemption too. But what I meant was, and I think that there's been an opportunism there. I'm not suggesting that the government haven't thought...
they didn't plan it, clearly.
No, that's handy when you haven't got them breathing it. But in terms of the public, slightly differently, this is the bit where you are right, which is one of the shocking aspects of the pandemic, was that when we were all demobilised and told we had to sit at home on the couch and kind of listen for the latest announcement, people were frightened. People didn't know initially what to think. And so they took to kind of like joining WhatsApp groups and trying to work things out and looking on the web and trying to understand the virus and trying to get... And then they found that innocent questions, you know, like saying, well, does anyone understand this part of the virus? Suddenly, somebody'd say, oh, there's a great video interview with some doctors in America. And then YouTube would take it down. And then the government were describing anything that didn't fit a particular narrative, and actually pressurising the big tech to take things down. They were saying that is misinformation. Now that then created this atmosphere of censoriousness that made people, I think, become suspicious of official information, and it's fueled...
Well, there's been a lack of scientific debate at a time where you could argue scientific debate has never been more important.
But I think it was also about trusting us to say we can sort out the wheat from the chaff. Look, there are some mad ideas around, but that's what public debate's around, where you can start saying that's a crazy idea. When they start banning things or start creating an atmosphere where they say that is a dangerous piece of information, that sadly fuels conspiratorial thinking, because people start going, I want to find out, then they go into the dark web. So I suppose, you know, what we're doing at the Academy of Ideas and what we try to do forever is to just say, the more you shine light on discussions and debates, the more you can actually sort out the merits and demerits of any argument. You can start to, you know, people do have some wacky ideas, and you should be able to say and hold them to account for them. And so I think, by the way, we've all fallen into the danger of echo chambers, of caricaturing each other. I mean, I'm very sceptical of a lot of the lockdown measures, but I can't stand how on, as it were, my side of the argument, quite a lot of people have said, why are those people, stupid people, brainwashed sheeple, wandering around, believing over the government? You think that's no way to conduct a public conversation. We need to, as citizens, take ourselves and each other seriously and have proper conversations. Yeah. So I'm looking forward to doing that at the weekend.
And understand why people have got
the views they've got. Absolutely.
And there's a lot